it's been a little while since we headed down the Bootfair and asked ourselves the question, just how much of a computer can you get for £5? So, this right here is a HP compact computer that I nabbed down at the Bootfair for just £5. The old negotiation tactic of asking how much they wanted for it, waiting till it inevitably didn't sell, and then offering them a fiver so they didn't have to go home with it and dump it, proved to work a treat. And honestly, given the state of this thing, you can sort of tell why. You know, not many people want to grab these old PCs. The front of the stickers are peeling off, there is a concerning amount of grime covering up the case, and it leaves a not so nice feeling in your hands when you're done trying to pick it up. And the best of all bit, as with all Bootfair appliances, it's completely untested. But with all that out of the way, the real question is, why don't we take this thing inside and give it a proper test? Now, I've gone and grabbed a cheap monitor out of the shed just for testing all this, the classic US Smart 5x4 monitor, which just never seems to stop working. Bit of foreshadowing there, the monitor was a little bit faulty, but with that all out of the way, all that was really left to do was to turn it on for the first time and find out really quick, does it actually work, and have we scored another bargain? Right, so you join me from behind the scenes, where I'm actually going to give this thing its first test. I've plugged it all in on a rather less than stable desk. I won't wobble it too much in case it all falls down. But let's find out if this thing turns on. I'm going to stay away from it. It's on. There was a fan. That's a hideous noise. The screen is a weird colour. Oh, the screen is a weird colour, that's not right. Windows XP is now slightly red. That could be the US Smart monitor, which I've dug out of a shed for testing, because it seemed oddly appropriate. We need a, is that 5x4 monitor? We need one of those. That was really speedy. You've got Windows XP on here. That was really speedy. The noise it's making is horrendous. Chances are, I really hope you can hear that in the audio and in the editing, because I'm using the camera microphone for this bit. But artifacting. That's not good. Artifacting on the Windows desktop. I don't think this is the monitor. The cable is in properly, isn't it? Yeah, the cable's in properly. That's a bit weird. What kind of graphics card are we running? Let's go to DX. Oh, it's getting worse. This is what happens when you buy a £5 computer. HP Compact, yes. Date is set to 2022, so that's probably the last time this thing was turned on. So 2 years ago. It's running Windows XP Professional. There's no system manufacturer, no model, no BIOS, apparently. But it is running the processor listed here, which is not a bad processor. 896 megabytes of RAM, so this thing has been upgraded from its original 512. And please have a good graphics card. It is not a good graphics card. It is an SIS 760 Revision 0, which is also artifacting. So, despite the horrible noise, does the DVD drive work? Well, that thought about it for a second. That works. That's quite cool, I like that. I love the old expansion bays. What's on here? Oh, the more I use it, the worse it's getting. Well, the removable drive's there. Any documents left? Got the sample music. Highway Blues is a good one. Sample pictures with artifacting. Look at that's beautiful. That is that's artifacting. Right, so it works. The question is now, what can we actually do with it? Who knows? After a little bit more investigating on the PC, it seemed like we had a relatively fully working unit. Yes, there was a little bit of artifacting, some of it from the monitor and some of it from the actual graphics output of the PC, but, you know, that could just be an SOS graphics card thing. They have a reputation for it. The main thing is, though, even with that horrific noise when it turns on, it does work, and that's no bad thing. So for £5, just how much power did we manage to get? It appears we've managed to get a hold of someone's slightly upgraded HP Compact Presario 5000 Plus desktop that has had various bits and pieces changed over the years. It features an AMD Athlon 64 3000 Plus processor, not something we often use on the channel, and a prime rival to the older Pentium 4s we love. Now, we've not used these all too much on the channel, but from my initial, sort of experience using it, they have a really good reputation, and I can kind of see why. It also has 876MB of DDR1 RAM, clocking at 400MHz, and a rather speedy 80GB IDE hard drive. So far, so good. But it does take a slight turn with the graphics side of things. An integrated SIS unit. From an era where if it wasn't ATI or Nvidia providing your internal graphics, well, you might as well look away from any gaming. But still, for £5, not half bad as a baseline PC. And from a retro perspective, a little bit of a bargain. From here, I spent the evening tinkering around with the PC, just seeing how usable it was in its current state. It was more than happy to read files off an SSD I'd left dangling off the front and let us make sure the drivers were all up to date, as well as DirectX and the likes. We wanted to see out of the box just how usable this thing was, and most of the time when everything was up to date, games would crash, programs would refuse to run, and there was certainly some funky artifacting happening at times, but it wasn't slow. That's the weird thing, it wasn't slow. I know it seems to have a wiped version of Windows XP on there, but even when I was unzipping programs, installing stuff, even running games while I was doing this, there was little to no slowdown. It's a bit like that Mac from last week, where the right operating system and no bloat in the software really shows that the hardware hasn't slowed down. It's everything we're forcing it to do alongside it. Towards the end of the night, we had things starting to take semblance a little bit. I'd managed to update various bits and pieces, and Fallout 2 actually launched, which was neat to see, and I got a bit lost playing it on a 5x4 screen, so most of my footage looks like that, and the processor was running at 100% while doing it, but then again it's a 2D game, it's handling most of the tasks. It didn't slow down while it was doing this though, so things were off to a great start. But that was about all we had time for with the first day of testing, as it hit around 2 in the morning and I'd just been playing Fallout at this point, so we'd seen it all worked, and that was about where we ended night 1. With a computer we'd already established as working, I really quite like these funky cases, and what would be the point in grabbing such a dusty, dirty little system if we didn't take the time to, take apart the cooler, put some new thermal paste in it, and get this thing all cleaned up for some proper use? Because trust me, we are really putting this thing through its paces in this video. If the video turns out anywhere near as long as the footage I've got, you're in for a wild ride. Day 2 was spent entirely on bringing this thing up to a modern speed. I had it hooked up via capture card so I can try and bring on as much of the journey as possible, and step 1 was trying to get actually, some modern software on here, because last night when we were completely offline we didn't have a great deal of success. Thankfully, GOG came in very handy, as Steam games mostly didn't run, but that was very much because the games were calling for a DRM the PC couldn't handle. Most drivers on the PC were also horrifically out of date or non-existent. Thing is, most drivers for this machine are more or less gone from the internet. There is no page on HP's website for these machines or anything like that. The closest info on these actually existing is a Best Buy page telling you that they aren't for sale anymore. But still, after a good few hours painstakingly finding drivers using the chipset name of all things, we managed to get a full assortment of them down, and a lot of these came from all over the place, but eventually we had the system where we needed it, where most of the components were now working. Or so I thought. See, I didn't actually bother to check which service pack we were running, because when I put Windows XP on something, it's either standard XP with no service packs, or the complete works with Service Pack 3. And we're running the weird middle child here, Service Pack 2. which I was reluctant to upgrade to Service Pack 3 because this thing was running so fast. And I know that Service Pack 3, despite all the compatibility it brings, can certainly run a lot slower than the previous releases. But still, for the sake of compatibility and testing, I bit the bullet and went to the Microsoft website and began installing Service Pack 3, which took an eon to do. I don't know why. Maybe the hard drive, maybe something. Sometimes on these old PCs things just take a while, but this took hours to install Service Pack 3, so we walked away and just left it updating. From here though, we were still having issues. Everything should have been working. We had the drivers, we had the system updates, we had the full works here. We even had the network connected. Yet there was nothing at all when we tried to get it online. Turns out the drivers provided by SAS don't actually work properly. It's a documented problem, and guess what SAS did? Nothing. But in 2004, Dell used some of these chipsets and provided their own drivers, unlike HP, who don't even recognize they sold this machine. So after claiming we had an old Dell Inspiron and downloading them, we installed them, and they still didn't work. Turns out, and this is the official procedure for this, what you have to do to get the internet running is uninstall the old drivers, restart the PC, then install the drivers, then disable them, then restart it again, and then when you enable it again, it all works. Don't ask me why when I had a look into it. I think it's because it's actually assigning a proper IP address and it's actually resolving the DNS, which it wasn't doing before. But if you're having issues on your 20-plus-year-old Compaq and you've been struggling to get online for 20 years, find those Dell drivers, install them, jump through the hoops above, and then suddenly you'll have the internet again. This seems an awful lot like we've got everything running, doesn't it? I mean, we've got games, programs, drivers, the works. So why don't we fire up some of those games and see just how £5 worth of PC handles itself in the benchmarks. Starting off our benchmarks, we have a classic with Command & Conquer Generals, which ran exactly as I remember it running on my frankly awful Vigeland PC. At around 20 FPS on average, we had the game running with the absolute lowest settings in 800 by 600. We couldn't even render explosions or particle effects. But even in this state, I found it just about playable. Well, maybe those of us who experienced the game like this when it originally came out will, but, you know, it was 20 FPS with some dips here or there. Morrowind didn't run great. Even in the lowest settings in 640 by 480, the game ran at around 20 FPS. Not ideal, but then again, even the original Xbox could drop to frame rates like this. But they got shadows and higher graphical settings and generally saw, 20 to 30. We were not seeing 30 here. Overall, not the best, but it was playable to a degree. I mean, the frame rate wouldn't change too much whether you were inside, outside, in combat, or just going around. I wouldn't call it a success, but it was playable provided you're willing to compromise and accept that 20 FPS is as smooth as you're really going to get. Sid Meier's Pirates was questionable. Now, I didn't go into this expecting great things, but 11 to 12 FPS was our average, with the occasional spike up to 30 FPS depending on what you were doing. Zooming out would tank the frame rate considerably, but the combat worked okay, and so did the inside scenes. But that only makes up a small chunk of the game. You had to deal with sailing around in single-digit frame rates on a sea that can only be described as a soup of 16-bit color bitmaps representing green and brown and artifacting. Not great, but certainly not a way I've ever seen the game run before. In stark contrast, though, Unreal Gold was a perfect experience, no faults at all. In 640 by 480 with high settings selected, the game often ran at around 60 FPS, only really dropping lower than this when there were water effects going on. I'm assuming it's the transparency here causing problems, and the SIS graphics chip did struggle. So much for ultimate 3D performance. We were running the game in DirectX 7 mode, as that was far more suited to this type of system, but throughout either of the campaigns, bot fights, or even the initial launch screen, it was a great way to authentically play the game on a system that really didn't break the bank. Fallout 2, which I got vastly carried away with the night before, ran fine. This was the version straight off Steam, which thankfully has no DRM attached, and very conveniently meant that we could just run it easily. Given this was all down to the processor, there was no slowdown, and I know this game runs fine on modern systems now, but there is something about playing the game in a lower resolution that just seems a little bit more right. The analog quality was about all I could judge from the graphics card, and it was okay. It's not Matrox tier, but then again, what even does come close to this from this sort of era? Not much. Crysis killed the PC outright. Not even the game. The installer actually crashed the computer and I had to restart it. Have I ever seen that happen? No. Can it run Crysis? No. Can it install Crysis? Also, no. Given that Mount & Blade Warbands has DRM, so I couldn't use it, Blood and Gold Caribbean was our next choice because it uses the same engine, and also because apparently we're going to try and be pirate-themed with these benchmarks, but it didn't run. It spent 15 minutes loading, and then gave us a flurry of errors and a small black box in the top of the screen that the start bar would get stuck in. So, realistically, an authentic Windows XP experience when you run software that is, of less than high quality. Overall, an interesting array of benchmarks that range from pretty playable in the classics through to downright weird in titles when this machine was actually released. I mean, what was happening in Sid Meier's Pirates, I really don't know. But still, for £5, virtually anything 90s is playable on the system, which in my mind isn't half bad given the money spent. Still, for all of you wondering how this translates into actual PC running performance, web browsing, video playback and the likes, well, things get even more strange. So feel welcome to have a little look with some live usage here. So this is just a bit of a live usage of the PC, just as we're recording now. And yeah, it's not too bad, we're not running anything. But first things first, why don't we try and go to the internet, which does take just a few seconds to load in, as it were. Unfortunately, we do only have, 868 megabytes of RAM, something like that? Whatever it is, it's not much. So, still waiting for the internet. Really puts into perspective how quick that Mac was from last week. Given that we're still waiting on the internet. There we go, just loaded in. Now, why don't we try and go to www.budget. Oh, no. Yeah, we are loading. Budget -builds -official.co.uk. It was loading old version there before we did that, but here we are. Let's see how we're getting on with the modern web. Not great. Not great so far. That is not loading. This is why we're coming out with an old HTML version to stop this happening. But can we get to articles? No? Get to the shop? Oh, the shop nearly works. Articles does not. What if we try a different browser? I've not actually tried... what if we try this one here? I'm not holding out much hope, but might as well try something else. As you can see, once we're actually using it, it's not too slow. It is a usable machine. Just everything we do tends to take just a little bit of time to start itself working right. Let's try this browser. That's even worse. Articles is down here. Can we... Oh, shop, home. No. That actually works even worse than the other browser. But yeah, we can get on the internet. It does work. We'll go back to the other browser now, which once you've used it, I mean, we were using it from a cold boot. Once you've actually got on here and started using it, it is okay. We go to Wikipedia. Takes a few seconds, but then again, we're dealing with a single core processor, under 1 GB of RAM. I mean, just take us to a random page. Go on. The featured page for today is Giraffe. There we go. So Giraffe, it loads fine. It works all okay. you know, as far as actually using this PC for basic web browsing, absolutely fine. We can try YouTube. I'm not holding out much hope. We've lost the internet. Oh, we'll try this one. No, we haven't lost the internet. Right, let's see. Budget builds official. How are we looking? Not too bad so far. I don't think the graphics card is going to be able to handle any modern decoding, as we just saw from the rather appalling benchmarks. Which, you know, some things ran better than expected, most things didn't. But we do have the Budget Builds official website, the Budget Builds official YouTube channel loading. Very slowly. We just gotta wait, and wait, and then wait a little bit more. But, oh, it's loaded the icon in the top left. It's loaded YouTube. Can we get on the video about the 16-year-old iMac? That's a really good comparison to this, because £28 against £5, you do seem to get a lot more. But it's even complete with the rather concerning advertising from the Windows XP era. We're off to a great start here. Right, let me try and mute that so it doesn't play out too loud, because we have got audio capture on. Oh, it's really struggling. It's really struggling. Come on. We might be here just a little while. I thought it was best to give a real time test, because everything looks smooth when you edit it. But a lot of people are more interested in seeing the real experience. What happens when you actually just turn this thing on and use it? And the answer is, not an awful lot. Oh, I say that, and then the video starts. Apparently it's only a minute long. I don't think that's working. Right, so video playback is not happening. It's not going to work on here. We got offline video playback, but online video playback, could it be Windows XP? Could it be the PC itself? Who knows? But when it comes to actually launching a game, I mean, I can show you now if you want. I can open up Unreal Gold. Ignore this critical error. And shut down the PC. And carry on with the rest of the video. Using Windows XP Service Pack 3 certainly was a little bit sluggish, but it did most things alright, as you just saw. Web browsing the likes were fine, as long as you weren't doing anything too intensive. You'll just struggle with some of the more modern parts of the web. Thing is, I remembered that at the Bootfair I didn't just buy this PC. No, I spent an extra £2 on a graphics card that day, which I found had long since been languishing in the boot of the Polo. You know, I'd wrapped it up, of course, but still, turns out what I bought is actually an AGP card, and not a bad one. No, it's one of the final ATI HD series cards. So why don't we see if we can push things even further? And so began the next day of testing. We've seen it work, we've seen it set up, and now we've seen what it can do. But with a £2 graphics card, and a quality one at that, can it make a bit of a difference for this here computer? Well, immediately I opened up the Compaq and fitted the HD2600XT, which for those of you that don't know this era of graphics cards, is one of the final AGP cards, and so it supports DirectX 10 and modern operating systems. Quite the find if it actually works. Only problem is now, we have an AGP slot, but we don't have a 6-pin sort of power connector. You know, most of the older graphics cards just have a Molex one, like a 4-pin plug-in. But no, this is modern, and we don't have one of those. So this led to me cannibalizing an old PC from the shed, just my old FX PC from 11 years ago, but it does have a modern Corsair power supply unit, which is ideal to see if this thing will run with a better graphics card. So what we did was we got that all taken apart, and I took everything inside to see if perhaps we could get some upgrades going on. At first, it wouldn't boot. After changing out the power supply, it turned out one of the processor pins had gone a little bit corroded from sitting in the shed for so long. And after a quick brush off, we had our first boot. And all that was left to do was add back in the HD2600 XT. And we should be golden, shouldn't we? Well, no. See, this is where things get extremely temperamental. See, looking at the graphics card and listening to it, it seemed to post. The fans would ramp up and then settle down, and you know, it seemed like it was working. But there was no display out of either the digital or the analog ports. And it was this testing that made me go and grab the classic US Smart monitor just to see if maybe our capture card wasn't detecting it. But still, no luck. So after hours and hours of troubleshooting, seeing if the BIOS was able to run with AGP cards, testing other ones, nothing would work. So we took measures to the next level and busted out the heat. After cooking the graphics card with heat for around 10 minutes, both the core itself and the PXP chip on the back, I left it to cool down for a hot minute to see how it was getting on. And eventually, we had it. The first boot. We had a post signal from the graphics card, so it was time to get this thing modernized. Keep in mind though, just because we had a display did not mean this thing was stable. Now, a lot of older AGP cards are dying off, a lot of mine are having problems now, so reviving one of the rarer cards out there, while also factoring in its unknown history from the Bootfair, left us with an experience where even changing the resolution was risky business. Even the installer itself could confuse the card, which I was hoping was just down to a lack of drivers, but a little bit at the back of my mind knew we were running on really borrowed time. Still, we managed to get tiny Windows 7 installed, which ran even smoother than Windows XP did, maybe down to a dying ATI card still being vastly better than an SIS chip, or more than likely, we weren't having to share any of our RAM with it at least. Fortunately, all our XP drivers were still compatible with Windows 7, and the AMD Omega drivers did actually install. It took a restart, and we had audio, networking, and to a degree, video drivers. But things very, very quickly took a turn for the worst. See, when just using this PC, it seemed alright, but higher resolutions could cause the capture card to drop out. It would work on the US Smart monitor to be fair, but something weird was going on with the displays, so we were sticking to a 4:3 resolution just so I could capture it. But eventually, as testing went on, things quickly got even worse than that, as you're about to find out. Now I figured what better way of demonstrating the PC on Windows 7 with a new graphics card than just showing you what I'm getting up to now. So I'm trying to install Firefox, and that's installing, which is all good, so we can close that browser. And it's noticeably quicker to use on Tiny 7 than Windows XP 32-bit, but if you can just about make out in the background the sound of the graphics card trying to die, that's happening. Steam, I know it's not meant to work on Windows 7, will not work here at all. If I launch it, it starts to launch, it's completed the initial installation, but if we actually try and get to it, it has issues with the web helper. But Firefox has launched, which is good. You know, we've got a modern browser on here. It's a more usable experience for day to day, but you can sort of make out here in the video capture the artifacting going on here, especially where I drag my mouse around. But here we are in Firefox, a more modern version of it, so we can see if we can do any more web browsing. Oh, that noise from the graphics card is concerning me. But oh well, we'll ignore that as we try and surf the web. budgetbuildsofficial.co.uk, will this load? I don't know how it's going to handle in a I don't dare change the resolution. As I've probably previously just explained, touching anything right now is a bad idea. It sort of makes things not want to work properly, so we just don't touch it. Resolution? This works. This is a resolution, we can live with it. But the Budget Builds official website loads. It loads in the mobile format, which is interesting. A very cursed version of the mobile format, but can we read an article on the Matrix C680? We can! Look at that! We can read an article in mobile formatting. Can we access YouTube at the bottom? Oh, video acceleration is going to be painful on this. Let's see. YouTube. Give it 5 to 10 working days. I feel bad for complaining about it on Windows XP now, because although it's quicker, it is worse in every way. Even with a HD graphics card in here. Let's mute that. And let's see how it handles video playback. Video playback is doable. That's actually quite impressive. Can we bring up the stats for this? Nearly? Nearly? There we are. It's not actually dropping all too many frames at 360p, which is quite impressive, but, you know, we do have a modern graphics card in there that can probably handle this type of decoding, admittedly with its own set of issues. So, yeah, actually more usable on the web. I'm quite impressed by that. What if I want to buy, I don't know, E46 Coupe? Takes a little while, but it's still quicker than Windows XP was, and yeah. We can buy one of those. I will not be buying one. I don't need one right now. But still, general usability is okay. Where it starts getting rough is gaming. Now, I'm going to try and launch a game. I've probably already shown off one of them. If not, you'll be seeing that in just a second. I'd imagine we'll be doing some updated benchmarks. So, let's say we try and run Half-Life 1. Half-Life 1 can't run because I don't have VC runtime. That's alright. What about if we run... Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I've already tested Fable with awful results. That Munch's Odyssey. That's a bit missing. VC redistributable. I think I've got these files on here somewhere, so it doesn't matter too much about the games. We can show that off in a second, but actual usability, if I go in here, I've got the redistributable files. x86. There we go. And I've got that one there as well. So we can go through and install these. But yeah, as you can see, it's more usable for day-to-day actually getting around using a computer, but everything else is questionable. I don't like changing resolution. I don't like touching things. It feels very unstable, probably because of this graphics card. I mean, a HD 2600 XT AGP is a rare card, but unspecified error. You know what? We can live with unspecified error. Is it going to launch something now? Let's find out. Local computer, Steam, Steam apps, common. Let's try something. Maybe Half-Life 2. It might launch Steam this way. Oh, Half-Life 2 has launched. I don't know how I'm feeling about this. I can sort of smell burning. Is there burning? Is the fan working? Yes, the fan is still working. The fan just ramped up a lot more after I put my finger in it. Look, right, loading. This is where we'll, Half-Life 2 is no better than, Fable the Lost Chapters there. Yeah, I'm not going to try running this, or do we? You know, let's try it real quick. We don't go to Ravenholm. Oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be really bad. I mean, the frame rate's amazing. Shame everything else is pretty bad. And I blew myself up. Right, let's try and not do that this time. Oh, I've got 9 health, that'll probably be why. I mean, it's less artifacting here than there was in Fable, so, that's not too bad. Oh no, that's bad. That's bad. So, right, let's exit out of this. Don't save. Games work better, as expected. I'm going to try another one here. No, that needs another VC redistributable file, but still, not the end of the world. There we go. The Windows 7 experience. In some ways better, in a multitude of ways, a lot worse. There was little to no point continuing the benchmarks as the graphics card began to drop out more and more and more, and we got to the stage where when I was even trying to run any testing beyond just web browsing and video playback, I would have to have a fan blowing at the card to keep it cool. Yes, I did change the thermal paste and clean up the card, but something weird was going on here. At least it is displaying something, but it's not displaying it very well. Still, maybe a full oven bake could have helped, but for now, it looks like the £5 PC is better off just left as a £5 computer. So, in conclusion once again, the £5 PC. I forgot how much fun and frustration comes out of these things in equal parts. On one hand, we got a semi-upgraded AGP-compatible PC for next to nothing, and I've always needed a good way of testing these older Athlon chips, which now we have on hand, so maybe we'll have to do a deep dive at some point, given that we've covered the Pentiumless era near enough in their entirety. But the ATI card, that was a bit of a shame. It took a long time to make this video, and it was very painful to even get some parts of it up and running, even without factoring in the graphics card. But still, at the end of the day, we had a good bit of fun. I hope you've all enjoyed this video, that it was equal parts intriguing as it was funny. Thank you very much for watching, and good night. 14 FPS. I wonder if we can get any. Oh, that is bad. The graphics card in this has an awful reputation for being crap.